Okay, I have Donald Asher in the booth with me today. He's the author of 12 internationally published books on career advice and has written various articles as a columnist for sites such as Wall Street Journal, MSN Education, and the LA Times, which have garnered him the nickname America's Job Search Guru. And perhaps most impressively, he once created a resume for a dog and got the dog 25 legitimate job leads. Is there anything else you want to add to your title there?
No, I didn't know you're going to bring up that dog. Yeah, that's a good story.
Yeah, it is one of the best I've ever heard. Yeah, that was amazing. Okay,
Thank
so
you, Ted.
yeah,
Glad to
no
be with you.
problem. Yeah, cool. So I'll just hop right in to my first question here. I After reading your book, Cracking the Hidden Job Market, um, I guess would summarize the main takeaway as if you want to get the job that you really want, you have to talk to a lot of people. So, would it be fair to say that what you're really trying to do is show people what effective networking looks like?
I think that's true. The problem with the word networking, Ted, is it reminds people of awkward cocktail parties when they were about 12 years old and the parents drug them in. And these old, smelly people looked you in the face and said, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" So I think the term should be like shelved. I don't think it's inaccurate. I just think that people have such loaded response to it. So I just call it talking to people. And so the idea that you get jobs by talking to people central to everything that I do. It's in that book that you're talking about, Cracking the Hidden Job Market. It's in a lot of my other materials as well. So I'm trying to get people to have a big picture about what that means. So it
Mhm.
doesn't necessarily mean in a cocktail party, but it could mean all kinds of things. Most of it happens on email, but social media as well. In real life, when you're riding in a cab, there's never a wrong time to talk to people about your career options, your career choices, and career directions.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think the phrase "it's not necessarily what you know, but who you know" really carries a lot of weight, and I think a lot of people can relate to that. So, um, yeah, I agree that that term networking is a bit confusing and misleading, but the way you express those ideas in the book, I thought was really well put. And so, um, I guess to describe how I came upon your book, it was because I typed in a bunch of keywords on Google because I guess I intuited that there had to be some book or expert out there who kind of understood what was happening behind those situations we know of when somebody gets a lucky break and finds a career job and a dream career job, and they really get ahead of what they even expected. So, I guess, that you're the only one that came up from that job search. And so I guess I'm wondering why this is all such why is the hidden job market hit? Why don't more people have a skill or knowledge base like you do?
Well, I'm not sure that I know the answer to that. I agree with you that we seem to have stepped away from this style of job searching. It's still the one that most people use, and it's still the most successful. In fact, it's how you find the jobs that are not advertised at all. It's how you become an inside candidate for those jobs that are advertised. And so there used to be more books on this some time ago, but I think mine is the leader right now, and there's just not a lot of info out there. And I think part of it is, Ted, that people love to do things online, and especially younger people. They do everything online. They get their pizza online. They order at McDonald's online. When they're on a date, they're texting each other across the table instead of talking to each other, which sounds
Mm,
like a cliche and a joke, but it's actually true.
certainly.
And so they think that this is the answer for job search as well. So I was on a radio show last spring, and the topic of the radio show was I graduated last spring, almost a year ago, and I still don't have a job. And so this was in LA, and it was a fast-paced radio show. So it's like, Louise, what's your problem? Crystal, what's your problem? And it was really fast. And so people were saying, they were jumping on there and saying, well, I did everything right. I had a virtual internship in the middle of the pandemic. I made sure that something happened. I had my resume's got stuff on it. I graduated, have high GPA, and just can't get traction. And so what they were doing wrong, Ted, all of them it was they were applying for jobs in the middle of the night. I would ask them, how are you looking for work? And they all said, I'm applying online. All night long. All I do in my pajamas till 4 a.m. is apply for
Mm,
jobs online.
mm,
Well, there are a couple things wrong with that. One of them is, as you mentioned, that resume for a dog. I made a resume for a dog, as you know, and it's the name of the dog was Rex K9. Okay, so I mean, right off the bat, you're like, I think this might be a dog. And then under objective, it said kibbles. Okay, now we know it's a dog. And under skills, I wrote able to bite intruders on the buttocks if they fail to show company identification. So I took that out and put it as an application at the top 50 corporate hiring sites. And I got, as you know, about 25 really polite little letters back saying, Dear Mr. Nine, we're carefully comparing your background with our needs, and we'll be in touch if we see a match. So those databases, if they can't tell you from a dog, they can't tell what you can do either. And
yeah.
so that's that. I'm trying to get people to get past that. You got to get past that. And so in this realm of talking to people, first of all, you mentioned it's who you know. I actually designed and put in the book all these things you can do when you don't know anybody. So you can be an international student, you can be the world's biggest recluse, and you can still use these techniques and tap into the hidden job market, jobs that are not advertised, or become an inside candidate, even if it is advertised.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point. I guess what I'm hearing is that there's just a difference between interacting with somebody via email or phone call and face to face. And obviously we know there's a difference, but I think the blind spot most people have is they don't realize how big of an actual difference that really makes. I mean, I was thinking to myself, why this is so hard, and I guess when you word it to yourself, it doesn't make sense that just being seen face to face with somebody is what is going to get you over that hurdle. But that really is what makes the difference. If I see you face to face, that's the best. Zoom's probably the next best. Phone call is probably the best. And I mean, do you have any insight on why that's the case?
Well, only humans can decide to hire you. So
Mm,
databases can only decide not to hire you. They're designed to sort people out. So applicant tracking systems are designed to limit the number of people that someone actually talks to, emails, Zooms with. And so the screen is so powerful. They can take a stack of 10,000 resumes and turn it into 12. And I'm not exaggerating; those are accurate numbers for what the applicant tracking systems do. So it face to face, as you said, is always best. Zoom is second best, or Skype second best. Phone is third best, and email is fourth best. But all of these things lead to a human thinking about you working for them.
mm,
And so if you don't have a human on the other end of the communique, you're spinning your wheels, and you have to be perfect.
mm,
Let's face it, not many of us are perfect. You're either too young, too old, you have the wrong experience, you changed jobs 4 times during the pandemic. Something about you is imperfect. And when you apply online, you have to be perfect, perfect. So you're a high net worth accountant applying to be a high net worth accountant. And the last 3 jobs you had, you were a high net worth accountant within a commute distance of my firm. That's who gets jobs online. So I'm not saying no one ever gets a job online. That's not what I'm saying. But let's talk about data. Between 55 and more than 80% of jobs trade hands through humans, not databases.
mm.
Between 55 and more than 80%, depending on your field and the circumstances of the hiring event. So that's a lot, but it's not just that more jobs change there. It's that the competition is incredibly, profoundly different. So if you apply for something that's been posted, the typical number of applicants is 383, according to one study, and over 500, according to another study. That's an awful lot of competition for one job, one job.
Mm, yeah.
But if you go out and use the hidden job market techniques, your competition is a handful, usually at most. So it's 5 or 6 other people. And in many, many cases, it's just you versus not doing anything. So if an employer, this is in particular true for small and medium sized enterprises, if they like you, they can hire you.
Mm,
So if you, even if they are not hiring, if you
mm,
can get them to talk to you, then they can hire. They can just say, "Okay, I'll take you." I was hiring interns one time. I just needed one, and I hired this guy at 10 a.m. And he was great. It was fantastic. And then I had another appointment at 2 p.m. with this woman, and I was just going to be polite and interview her, but she was awesome. So I hired them both. It didn't matter.
mm.
I'm not going to go broke because I hired 2 interns.
Yeah,
Nobody's budget is going to be broken because they take another person on their team.
yeah,
So it's I guess I want to encourage people to understand it doesn't matter whether they're advertising. What matters is, could you make a contribution there? And if the answer is yes, find somebody to tell that to.
yeah. No, I mean, I think you just summarized the story you just told there. I mean, I think explains what I was asking perfectly. Um, it really does just seem to be the element that gives you that kind of luck I was talking about does seem to be the human element that you're kind of creating a shortcut there with.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so like if you're trying to get a dream job there anywhere really, you want to avoid the competition and you want to you want to give yourself that head start by being seen in person. So is there
Nobody
anything
wants to be in a stack of 700 resumes.
right.
Nobody wants to be there.
Absolutely, absolutely. I guess I wish there was a better way to get that across, but I think when I read your book, it I understood that so much more deeply, and I think this applies to other areas in life, just meeting people face to face as opposed to just trying to get what you want, a date or whatever online. It just makes the hill you have to climb a lot higher, right? Is that
Well,
fair?
I think you're exactly right. This is a life skill. We're using the application of getting a job, but it's actually a life skill. So people with big, robust
Mm,
networks, they run them all the time. So
yeah.
how do you run a network? So the first thing I tell people is you got to give to get. And so if you have a bunch of people you want to interact with, let's say that I'll just talk about dusting off a dormant network. So your network includes everyone you've ever interacted with in your whole life. That's your
Yeah.
network.
Mhm.
So let's say you get fired or separated, or the company goes south, and you suddenly need your network. It's nice if before you ask for something, you send all these people something, a little notice. Hey, thinking about you, right out of the clear blue sky. I mean, if they're, I'll make something up. If they're a Cubs fan, you send them a note, a link to a particularly interesting Cubs game. If they're a Raiders fan, you write something about the politics of the Raiders in Vegas. It doesn't matter. And then if they're someone you could send an article to, a physical article cut out of a newspaper or a magazine, that's a really low cost, low to you cost to open up that connection again. If you have more money, and some people do, and this, by the way, these techniques work from college, high school graduates, all the way up to CEOs. So, but some of the people have quite a bit of money, and they'll send actually whole books to people. So they'll drop $30 to reopen a connection with somebody before they need them, and then they wait a couple weeks and they say, "Hey, I'm on the market." So, but the punchline is the people that do this really well, they do it all the time.
Yeah,
They've
yeah,
got
yeah.
they've got 100 people that they're
Mhm.
keeping warm by sending them notices. Hey, saw your company had this big win. Here's a link to an article about it in the Wall Street Journal. Congrats to your team. And so they spend time and energy keeping this going. It's not. It's the only thing that's expensive about it is it's emotional energy, cognitive space.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and a tiny little bit of money. But like you say, it works for any problem you want to solve. The guy that originally turned me on to this is a movie producer, and he's got a huge network. I would guess it's probably thousands of people. And I noticed that he was contacting me every 6 months. I just happened to notice. I was like, "Hey, I'll say the guy's name, and I won't say his last name." I said, "Killian, I hear from you every January and every July. I just happened to notice that." I said, am I on your tickle system?" He said, "Yeah, you are." And I said, "Well, why do you do this?" He said, "Because you're an asset. You know a lot of people. You write articles. I just think you're somebody that's important to know." And I said, "What's the value to you of this network?" And he said, "It's invaluable, because
Yeah,
when you're on a movie set, you got to solve problems. So if I needed a Japanese trick rope cowboy tomorrow afternoon at 4 o'clock on my set, I could find somebody who knows a Japanese rope trick cowboy."
yeah.
And so that was the example he used. I don't know if it's accurate or not, but I'm pretty sure if you needed a trick rope cowboy, he could find one and put it on a set. And
Uh,
that's the value to him for the movie business. But to you as a human, this is for everything: job search, seeking romantic partners, seeking somebody to paint your house. Doesn't matter. Those networks are extremely valuable. And I want to bring something up, Ted, because sometimes people say, "I'm introverted. I'm not the big glad hander. I'm not the extroverted salesperson. Can I do this too?" And the answer is yes, you can. It will not feel natural to you. It'll feel
mm,
like you're really like taking a big risk. But you can do it. You don't have to be a suave, debonair, a natural storyteller in order to do this. The reach out can be the same 95% of the time. "Hey, haven't talked to you in a while. Here's what's up with me. Thinking of you. If something happening big in your life, let me know. Just staying in touch." It's the same thing to everybody. Doesn't matter. So I guess that a lot of times people read this or talk about it or go to a workshop on it, and they think it's for the glad handers. Not. It really is for everybody. And while
mm.
we're at it, I'll throw this on the table. The top salespeople in a corporate sales setting, that's where relationships are more important than a single interaction. In a corporate sales setting, the top salesperson is almost always an introvert. Now, why is that? It's because they're more empathetic and they listen better. So
Mm.
nobody gets off the hook on this. You can't say, "I'm shy. This is not for me," or "I don't have a network. I'm from out of town. I'm an international person just here on assignment." Everybody can do this.
Yeah, no, I think no, I think what we're really highlighting here is why this is such a invaluable skill. Like you said, it's your movie producer friend said it's the most, invaluable because, and I think what most people are missing here when they do it is that what you're really doing is you're playing the law of large numbers. Not every person you connect to is going to give you that home run that you want. But if you do that enough times, if you just keep rolling the dice with people you meet, it is only a matter of time before
It,
you
it
meet somebody who either can connect you or can connect you to somebody they know.
That's exactly right, Ted. It's about overlapping social worlds. So your closest friends are usually not the source of your tip for your next job. And the reason is because you have the same social world. But
Mm,
when you have barely overlapping social worlds, that connection gives you access to a whole new social world. And if they send you to somebody over here at the edge of their social world, so it's actually allowing you to access a vastly different number of people. So you've named it. It's very interesting from a social science point of view. It turns out that weak ties are a better source of these connections than strong ties.
certainly.
So that cousin you haven't talked to in 5 years, and that I don't know that international student you were from Spain that you were friends in the 11th grade. Those are in fact the best connections.
Yeah.
Weak ties produce the leads that lead to fruition when you're doing this type of connecting.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think, this is actually a really good segue to my next question because it was really you that explained to me why it's so important to have these specific goals because if you know what it is that you want, you can you can go out and you can meet these people, like you said, network or talk to people, and if they know what you want, you're not only meeting them, but you're also basically meeting everybody they know, because
Yeah.
it's an easy step for them to hook you up and do you a huge favor. Um, and I think most people are thinking, like, when they think about networking, they're trying to meet somebody who is going to give them the job. They're too direct about it. Where
Right.
the real thinking is you're just trying to like put eggs in a lot of different baskets, as opposed to, yeah.
Yeah, you're right. And so you touched on something that's important. If you ask people a specific question, they're more apt to try to help you. So if you just say, "Hey, I'm unemployed. You got any ideas?" Or "Hey, I'm unemployed. You got any openings at your organization?" That's a small world approach. I'm not saying it doesn't work, because it does. But if you call up people and say, "Hey, I'm interested in industrial level recycling and global trade in recycling materials. You got any ideas about that? You know anybody who does that? For example, let's take your company. Where do they send their recycling?" So anybody can answer that question in a way that's helpful to you, because they're going to tell you somebody that you can now talk to. And so and so I tell you why people don't do this. It's because they A, are not sure, or B, sometimes they tell me, "I don't want to limit my options." You're not limiting your options. You're getting someone to help you. And if somebody has a tip for you that's tangential, that redirects you, they'll bring it up. So suppose you call up somebody and say, I'm interested in industrial level recycling. And they say, "Well, why are you interested in that?" You say, "Because you want to save the earth, and it's much more efficient to recycle materials than it is to create new materials." And then they say, "Well, I don't know anything about recycling, but my cousin is an award-winning designer of green roofs. He's putting parks and even entire gardens on the roofs of high rises in LA, and changing the microclimate around that building." And
Sure.
you can, when you hear that tip, you can go, "Oh, I'd like that. Can you introduce me to your cousin or uncle or whoever it is that's designing the green roofs?" So it helps if you come in the door with an idea. That's
Mm.
really true. And now you can always call up people and say, "Hey, you're successful. I'd like to talk to you about your career and get any tips you might have for me as I try to figure out my next career direction." That works really well too. But I like it better when someone can come to the door with an idea that they're pursuing.
Absolutely, yeah. I don't know what it is that makes it hard for people to have those specific goals, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't also have that problem.
Mhm.
It's hard to know exactly what it is that you're trying to get, because and I think this kind of like links back to the first question, which it's really hard to know what job you want if you don't know how many options there really are. Like, I think you gave an exercise in your book where you're just trying to open people's minds to this, when you were saying, think about what your dream job kind of looks like or feels like, and type those words in Google, and eventually you'll hit upon something that you didn't even know existed before, and it might just be exactly what you wanted. Um, yeah, and so I think, like, for myself, it was just all I know is that I really want to learn and apply psychology,
Mhm.
and that's a good enough starting point to just type in things, get some ideas expanded, take some online whatever, and then to skinny that down to a specific goal. Right.
Well, I think you're that's enough, Ted. I mean, just the idea that you want to do applied psychology. So, if you start looking at that, a place to start is like therapy, but that involves a credential and additional training. But also the thing that you're doing right now, which
Yeah.
is using media to explore applied psychology. And so the more people that you talk to about this, you may find a direction you want to go, or you may decide this is it.
Yeah.
Maybe this is it, because applied psychology is everything from family systems problems, recidivism with prisoner. I mean, there's no end to the stuff that you could do with this. But when you so there's a bunch of exercises to go back to coming up with that original idea. There's a bunch of exercises in the book that help people get off the dime. That because action is better than no action.
Mm,
Action is better than anguish. So if
mm,
you're sitting around anguishing, I don't know where to start. The exercises, they're pretty typical career development exercises. There's skills based techniques and there's values based techniques. Skills based techniques are things like, I can present well, I can write well. What kind of career directions would those skills be really valued in? And values based is a little bit different. What do you care about? So briefly, I'll just tell about a student I was working with. He was a master's in engineering, mechanical engineering. The guy was depressed. He came into the one-on-one meeting with me, put his head in his hand, and he said, "I doubt you can help me." So I said, "Okay, what's going on with you?" He said, "I'm about to graduate with my master's in mechanical engineering and design." And he said, "I just don't care about it." I said, "Okay, so what's the worst thing about it?" He said, "Well, if you're on a design team, you're not the designer, you're the engineer. So the designer says something and you say whether it'll work or not. If it works, that person gets credit. And if it doesn't, they hate you." I said, "Wow, that sounds like a bad job." I said, "Well, so what do you care about?" So he was sitting there and he said, I don't know, I care about veterans." I said, "Okay, why do you care about veterans?" He said, "Well, my brother's a veteran, my dad's a veteran. I think everybody in my family's a veteran but
uh,
me. And I
mm,
saw how my brother was treated when he came back from Afghanistan. He was blown
mm,
up. And, I see that, we act like we care about our veterans, but we don't."
yeah.
I said, "Okay, so what could you do? Tell me more about your brother." He said he had a prosthetic leg. And I said, "Okay, you're a mechanical engineer. You want to serve veterans, and your brother has a prosthetic leg. You don't see a connection there?" And the guy said, "Oh my gosh, I could design prosthetics. I could get on that kind of team." And off he went. The guy stood up. He literally stood up in the room. And I was like, "Wow, I'm glad I could help you, buddy."
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
values based career development. So you think about
absolutely.
what you care about, and then you say, "How could I use my skill set to contribute to that societal problem or endeavor or thing that I care about?" That's values
Yeah.
based. That's what I like the best, Ted.
Yeah, that was exactly the answer that I was looking for. And I mean, I think you explained that beautifully. And I just want to say that I think you kind of caught me there because this whole project that I'm doing is kind of, exactly that. I'm just trying to talk to a lot of people and sort of get an idea of where I might want to end up. And your book really, like, actually inspired a lot of, um, I guess, confidence in doing this, and reaching out to all these people. Um, and so, like you said, the value based idea, like brainstorming or whatever, there is such a good thing to, I think, for people to meditate on, because you really can't do a good job of something unless there's some kind of intrinsic motivation to do it. Yeah, yeah. And so, like,
Long term, you need that intrinsic motivation. Short term, you can fake it. The long term, the whole world's different if you are internally motivated.
yeah, absolutely. And so,
And
like,
that's
yeah.
more applied psychology, Ted. Here we are doing it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Here we are. All these, past couple years, I've just, after I got my degree, I pretty much just spent a lot of time studying what I wanted to actually study
Mhm.
that was out there. And so eventually I got to a point where I knew I wanted to get in the career world and use what I've learned. And so, um, this is kind of just, this whole project I'm working on is really my best shot at that right now. And um,
Well, I
uh,
love it.
have you ever read Mastery by Robert Greene?
I have not.
Okay, okay. Well, I mean, it just sort of echoes the same sentiment you had there with the values based, and then
Mhm.
combining different ideas, like the example you gave with the prosthetic leg. that taps into an intrinsic motivation for him, but it also uses the skills that he's already developed.
Right.
And yeah, and yeah, so I don't know if you had any thoughts there.
I'll get it today.
What's that?
I'll get it today.
Okay, yeah, I think you'd love it. It's
Yeah.
about the psychology of how to master a craft. Yeah, I think you might like it. Okay, so let's see here. Um, so we're getting towards the end here. I like to ask all my guests an open-ended question of if you could ask yourself a question, or if you wanted to, if there's something you really were passionate to teach about or excited about, what would it be? Did you have any ideas for yourself there?
I do. So there's something that I know that I think is not commonly known, and that's always what you want to teach. You want to
Mm,
teach. You don't want to be the 100th person to make a good point about X. So this is novel. So bear with me here. This is a
okay,
little bit hard to
yeah,
explicate,
you have the floor.
but it in life, and I mean this in a big sense, not just in careers. You need to try a lot of stuff out, and increasingly people don't do that. For example, when I was in high school, half the students had jobs, half of them. We had jobs for a variety of reasons. Some of us wanted spending money. Some of us, our parents had a work ethic where kids had jobs. Nowadays, people don't have jobs until after they graduate college. If they do, it's some kind of a volunteer thing, maybe, but they don't have jobs. And then when they get a job, and this happens when people graduate into a recession or graduate into a pandemic, they become risk averse because they're like, I'm lucky to have this. I'm lucky to have this. And so they don't job hop around. And here's the punchline to where I'm going with this. You benefit from job hopping. You find out what you love, and you
Yeah.
find out what you like, and you find out what you don't like.
Mm,
And so jumping in and out of a whole bunch of different jobs and industries is frowned upon by everybody. But the data are that if you're a high potential person, now I realize that some people do that because they're duds. They keep getting fired or squeezed out or told to look for elsewhere. But if you're not a dud, this allows you to really have a panoply of experiences to decide what is it you really like.
mm,
And you can imagine what you like, but you'll find this in the psychology readings, Ted. People suck at predicting what they like, so they have to
yeah,
actually go try it out.
yeah,
So I would encourage everybody to think about this um, widely, but also go out and have a bunch of different jobs. I think one of the better things a person could do is actually work temp for a year. Just work temp and don't stay anywhere more than 4 weeks.
mm,
Just go in and out of these different industries and in and out of these different functions. Um, you know, uh, I had so many jobs, I couldn't possibly list them all.
mm,
I would probably not
mm,
pass a security clearance because I couldn't possibly remember all of them.
mm,
I had jobs in high school and jobs in college and jobs on the side. And so my encouragement of people is try stuff out. If you don't like what you're doing, start looking for a job immediately. If you get into something that doesn't look like a fit, keep looking.
yeah,
And that leads to you optimizing the application of your skill set in the career marketplace. So it's your skills, the career marketplace, what pays and what doesn't pay.
mm,
And so you want that to all line up. You could be the world's best person in an industry or a sector that pays really poorly. That's okay if you don't care about money, but if you do, you're not optimizing your experience of engaging with the career marketplace.
hold on,
So
what
that's
was that last part you just said? I'm sorry.
so
Yeah,
you could be the world's best person in a sector of the economy that's really low paying.
okay,
And I'm saying that that's not optimizing your engagement with the career marketplace. Now, some people don't care about money, and that's okay for them, and they really don't care.
okay,
But if you do care at all, you could take that same skill set, place it somewhere else, and be the world's best at that, and make way, way, way more money.
Mm,
So I'm not saying money's the be all and end all. I'm just trying to make this point about the whole concept of your skill set, the marketplace, what you do, what you're paid. It takes some actual field experimentation. And not only does this come up in a person's early career, it even comes up in retirement. I did my doctoral work on retirement, and the people who were happiest in retirement, they were serial retirers. They
I
would
see.
retire, try something out, come back, volunteer at something. They would have 5 or 6 attempts at retiring, and they were the happiest in the study.
Okay. So, yeah, that just does seem like another blind spot. The first thing I thought of was, I think you put it well when you said the the reason why people don't do this more is that they're risk averse. They don't want to waste they think of it as wasting their time and energy or whatever. And then that makes total sense because I can track that happening in myself. And then the part you said, I think that would really uh, persuade somebody into your point of view here is that you said the way to optimize your career potential is by trying a bunch of different things. Now
Right.
that part that doesn't seem obvious. So can
It's
you
not.
explain
It's
why
not.
that?
And that's why I wanted to convey this.
Mm,
I don't see this anywhere. I don't see anyone talking about it.
mm-mm,
Most of the articles that you read are written from the point of view of power. It is not in any institution's advantage for some young person to come into a place for a couple of months and then leave, but it may be perfect for the young person.
yeah,
So it's really a point of view that's from the experiencer, not the structural power, and that's why you don't have this message floating around because it's people the people who put out media actually have structural power, and so this is a point that's not going to find a wide audience,
yeah.
but it could in your podcast show.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, that would be a dream. But I mean, forgive me if I'm missing the point here, but I guess I just don't quite understand why that, because I've heard this before from smart people. At this point, you got to try a bunch of different things, but I guess I don't see how that links directly to optimizing your career potential. Is it because you is it another idea of the law of large numbers, or is that
No, it's not. The numbers aren't that large on this one.
yeah.
Somebody just did a study of how many people you have to date to find somebody that you're going to be very likely to be satisfied with. You can find that person who made that study and put them on your show. And so it's not large numbers. We're talking about somewhere, and I'm just guessing, between 6 and 15, a smaller number, a reasonable number, but way more than people are doing. Young people don't move around the country and they don't switch jobs
Mm,
like they used to. As a matter of fact, it's kind of a phenomenon.
mm,
And so I'm not talking about large numbers, but I am talking about trying different things out. And the reason that this has a good outcome is you discover what you like. So, for example, in my case, I was a writer, and I became a speaker by accident. Literally, I became a speaker because of a rule, an accounting rule at my publishers. They wouldn't give me an advance to do research for a book I wanted to write, but they said, well, we'll pay you to go and talk about your last book, and then you go to the cities you want to do this research for your next book. And I was like, okay. So I became a speaker literally because of an expense account rule at my publishers. I had no idea I liked speaking.
mm.
So that's trying stuff out. And doing different things to see where your greatest passion and greatest contribution can be found.
Yeah, yeah, and so yeah, I guess I think what you're saying is you really don't have as good an idea of what you like, and
Well, you said that yourself.
yeah, 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 and so you would agree with that then?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I think as soon as this interview's over, I'm probably gonna go try to get some other jobs that are different from what I'm used to doing. And
You can You
I'm
can
a
use the platform of this show to explore anything, Ted. You have
yeah.
a good platform, my
Thank
friend.
you. I really appreciate that. That gives me a lot of encouragement. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think I didn't have a ton of confidence doing this until people like you have given me feedback like that. It means a lot. It really does. So and I also want to say I really appreciate the time you've taken to talk to me because you really didn't have to do any of this. I just saw in your book that you would take it seriously if somebody called you. So I decided to reach out, and I've talked to you a few times before, and now you're here, and yeah, for everybody watching, if there's anybody you want to network to, take me as an example from reading his book, and read his book, and you can. It's really not as unrealistic as it seems. So yeah,
Well, thank you, Ted, for
yeah.
having me. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much. I'll talk to you again soon, sometime. Okay.